Well, then in 2011, my brother died, not of an overdose, but he did have meth in his system. And he had struggled with addiction. He had recently been arrested for a drug-related crime. And we as a family were really trying to figure out how to wrestle with that, how to support him without enabling him, how to figure out what in the hell was going on and what needed to be done about it.
Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Andersen.
Anybody heard any good jokes lately?
No.
Shanna Hesketh, thank you for joining us.
Yes, it's actually Shanna Hesketh.
Shanna, sorry.
Rhymes with banana usually helps people remember.
I will remember. I will never mess that up again now. Of course, you're a lawyer here in the Fresno County area, and we're going to get into all kinds of interesting stuff. But we were talking prior to this getting on, and you see it at conferences, and I didn't know this till you guys started talking about it, but like self-care for attorneys and the secondary trauma of cases, because we always thank the individuals that are there, but forgetting that those that are doing the work are impacted by this too.
As a lawyer, you're not really doing your job if you're not also going through the things that your clients are going through. And even though I wasn't abandoned at age 4 and handed over to an MS-13 drug lord to do chores for them, I did have a client who went through that. And so I had to sit down with him every single week and build trust and hear the things that he went through in order to be able to more effectively tell his story. And so one of the things that I tell my clients all the time is, like, I had to live my story so that I could tell yours. I had to go through I built my firm, Trauma Law California, on the back of my traumatic bullshit. So I had to go through all of that in order to, A, walk with you guys through your stuff, and B, effectively tell your story to either the insurance company that we're hoping is going to cut you a check at the end of your personal injury case, or to the DA who we're hoping is going to, the DA, the judge, the jury, who's going to be making a decision about what happens with your future. And so you really have to go through all of this with them, not only just sitting with them and what happened to them, but also what happened to the victim, what happened to the witnesses, what did they have to observe, really just sitting through all of these big, hard, scary things. Still to this day, one of the hardest cases I've ever worked was that MS-13 homicide case. It was 3 murders. My guy was very, very young, and he was one of my favorite clients I've ever worked with. But looking through the discovery, the police reports, the photographs in that case, I still have nightmares about it years later. And so, yes, secondary trauma and addiction and things like that in the legal community are a huge issue, to the point where we now have to take a certain number of MCLE hours, continuing education, to help us deal with our competency, which in some realms could be, your ability to practice law, but also your ability to take care of yourself so that you can then take care of others.
Right.
So are you guys required to do certain things? Is certain classes that you have to take in order to deal with this? And the reason why I bring that up is, I've presented numerous times in front of the local bar association and the federal bar association, and I know that's continuing ed for a lot of lawyers, but it's mostly just about what's going on in the drug world. So it really doesn't. My role in it doesn't really get into the therapeutic side for lawyers. So
we have different categories of things that we have to get continuing education in. One of them is just general. So what you're talking about with the impact of opiates and fentanyl in Fresno County and how that's being dealt with at a local, state, and federal level, that would probably fall into the general category. Then we also have to take implicit bias or elimination of bias. I just got done at the death penalty seminar a couple of weeks ago, and with the passing of the Racial Justice Act and some changes to the way juries are selected recently, we were really diving deep into some of these racial issues that are implicit in a lot of cases, and that a lot of those fell into that implicit bias category. One is competency. So there's a lot of things that fall into competency. If I'm being honest, a lot of the legal profession was formed, and the way that we do things was, in a sense, dictated by a lot of alcoholic coke addicts in the 70s. And
Call it like it
so
is.
trying to move away from that a little bit. How to take care of yourself in the midst of those traumatic situations might fall into that. Learning how to open a PDF is part of competency as a lawyer these days.
Sure.
And also just managing a calendar, doing what you need to do to take care of yourself so that you take care of your people, take care of your clients. And then the other is ethics. You know, don't be a crook, don't be a creep, don't sleep with your clients, don't steal their money, those types of things.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, when I'm listening to it, there's some very similar parallels to the things that you've kind of taken me under your wing on with, you know, one of the early lessons that he taught me when you come here is, hey, this is not your recovery.
Right.
And so for me, that was like, oh, I got to have a boundary still with this. Some of this stuff is tough, these conversations we have. I mean, you have a story that connects very closely to Pam here, who, you know,
Yes.
and so many other people that have been through the doors. And just when I hear their stories or have conversations that I've had to just get in touch with these things, but let it out and continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so. And so my connection to Pam, my younger brother, Justin Hesketh, he was shot and killed in 2011. However, my brother was a part of a group of boys that had the most beautiful friendship. Like,
Right.
these boys are what Hollywood writes TV shows about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just look at the bond that they had and how close they were and how they did everything together. I called them my other brothers. I knew that if I heard like a stampede of skateboard wheels on the asphalt outside my house, I needed to preheat the oven and get an entire box of bagel bites ready because the other brothers were showing up. And so Jackson was one of them. Jackson was one of those boys. Well, then in 2011, my brother died. Not of an overdose, but he did have meth in his system. And he had struggled with addiction. He had recently been arrested for a drug-related crime. And we as a family were really trying to figure out how to wrestle with that, how to support him without enabling him, how to figure out what in the hell was going on and what needed to be done about it. And man, if we had known something like this had existed at that time, or if something like this had existed at that time, it would have been super helpful.
Yeah, it did.
We didn't know about it. So
Right.
I'm really honored to be able to help get the word out now so that something like this could help folks
Exactly.
like us back then. But so my brother died with meth in his system. You know, we get the toxicology results back, and it's this blow in the midst of our grief that, you know, he wasn't recovering the way that we thought he was, that we thought we had been doing what we needed to do to get him clean, keep him sober, supporting him in the way that he needed to do. And just looking at him, you would have thought that he was clean. You would have thought that he was taking care of himself. He was going to meetings. He was going to college. He was in Fresno State. We had classes, you know, in the same buildings. We saw each other a couple times a week just at school, in addition to living together at home. And I really thought that he was doing well. Mm-hmm. And so then in the midst of our grief, to be hit with this toxicology result showing that he had meth in his system really kind of changed the narrative in his murder case. Mm-hmm. Changed the narrative in the trial, changed the narrative in the media, changed the narrative in everybody else's minds. But it didn't change anything for us.
Sure.
We still miss and love him. We still were grieving. We were still devastated by his loss. And the more that we've kind of gone through this, the more that, opiates and fentanyl have taken a hold on our community, and the more that we've been losing people, the more that I've realized these people, yes, maybe they died of a fentanyl overdose like Jackson. Maybe they died of some other sort of trauma that came about related to their addiction. Maybe their body just couldn't handle the years of abuse that their addiction put onto their body, and they died of some correlated cause.
Mm-hmm. Right.
No matter what they died of, they were still a human being that was deserving of love and was loved by their family. They're still a person who deserves to be grieved and remembered fondly. Yeah. When I talk to people, they don't ever mention, oh, yes, Justin had meth in his system. They mention his smile. They mention how he was just a funny kid, how they never saw him without a beanie on. These are the things that last, not the toxicology result.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50-plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt Andersen and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery. To proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
I think that's where some of the dehumanization, as Flindt and I dig more into people with the decriminalization of for the drug user, as well as harm reduction and things like that. I think there's a lot of the humanity removed from it.
Very much.
And that this pendulum swings, it's either one direction or the other, and we're not getting in the middle, because it's either throw them in jail or just leave them on the streets to freely use drugs.
Right. And so you've got to kind of find a spot in the middle. And I'm just speaking from the perspective of a lawyer who takes care of people who are suffering through addictions, and also a family member who fought like hell to try and take care of somebody who was suffering with an addiction. You got to find something in the middle where you're supporting them without enabling them. And where does that line, where do those paths cross?
Yeah, Flindt, where do you think those paths, I mean, this is an area where you really...
That's the bazillion-dollar question that California and every other community would love to answer.
First of all, look, most addicts, you're absolutely right. We are human beings. We deserve to be loved. We deserve the best that life has to offer, but we've decided to take this other path. Okay, for whatever reason, whatever decision came into our heads to take this path. I think, like yesterday, I was speaking before an organization, and when I told them that 90% of our clientele went to a Clovis Unified School, and that the other 10% went to Bullard and San Joaquin Memorial and Fresno Christian, they gasped. I mean, it was like jaws dropped, because everybody assumes, not everybody, but most people assume that us addicts we're scumbags, we're criminals, we're all of these things. Most addicts, I have to say...
I don't even think it's that, though. I think that the families in Clovis Unified, the families in Bullard, the families in San Joaquin Memorial think that couldn't happen to me.
Well, of course. I mean,
that couldn't happen to my kid.
That just goes with the territory. Right?
I don't think it's necessarily thinking that. I think that, well, there might be part of that thinking that the addicts are trash, but certainly I'm
saying outside of those parents.
Right.
I'm saying the general public.
Got it.
I'm not talking about the parents thinking that, but people that aren't dealing with an addiction issue. All right, because all they see, this is something that we've fought for a long time. All they see on the evening news is, they'll talk about something going on at Clovis North. Let's say there was a death at Clovis North, and invariably every single time that camera will show Clovis North on one frame, and then it shifts to under the bridge on the next frame. And all the people see on the news is that toothless person that's living under the bridge, and then they assume that everybody's living under that bridge.
It's the painted narrative.
Exactly. It's inaccurate. It's totally inaccurate. But look, here's the other side of this. You reach a certain point in your addiction, and I don't give a shit who you are, right? You will pull a criminal, whatever you want to call it. You will commit a crime. Definitely you will commit a crime to get the drug that you need. And it's out of necessity. It's not because you want to be a criminal. It's not because, that's who you are. No, it is a necessity. I did it. I don't know of an addict that is in full-blown addiction that hasn't done it. Whether it's an extremely small crime or a major crime, it's still a crime.
Yeah.
Because we're driven to that point where people don't understand. We have to. It's not that we want to. We have to. Because once again, it only boils down to a couple of things. It boils down to we don't want to get dope sick. Actually, it boils down to one thing. We don't want to get dope sick.
That brings to mind a case that I had, a client who he had committed a vehicle theft. Vehicle code section 10851. They're kind of synonymous with being committed by addicts here in the community. I've never seen a 10851 case that was committed by somebody who was healthy and not dealing with addiction.
Just felt like stealing a fucking car that day.
Literally never happened.
Right.
Every single time I've seen one of these cases, it has been an addict who is fighting off getting dope sick, needs to get money to get dope. How do I do that? Oh, hey, this car.
Right.
That one. Let's get that one. And that's how it comes about. And so I was talking to this client, and I don't remember how this came about, but as I'm talking to him and he's explaining how I was still very young in my career, not as educated in terms of addiction and things like that. And so he's explaining to me why he's doing this to fight off being dope sick, to fight off detoxing and things like that. And he's explaining how the processes that your body goes through during withdrawal. Mm-hmm. Very intelligent guy. Explaining it in such a way that I immediately understood why he wouldn't want to go through this. And at the time, I guess I had maybe been reading through Exodus in my Bible study or something, but it just kind of came to mind, the Exodus story. And for those of you that don't know, in Exodus, the Israelites, the Jews are in Egypt. They're being forced to do slave labor by the Egyptian government, the Pharaoh. And under one regime of the pharaohs, they are given these bricks, and they're forced to take the bricks and build the pyramids and the buildings, whatever. So they're provided with the bricks, and then they have to build the thing. Well, then the regime changes. They've got a new pharaoh, and this new pharaoh says, you know what, y'all are lazy. We're not going to give you bricks anymore. You've still got to build just as much. You've still got to move as many bricks, but now you've got to make them too. We're not providing you with bricks anymore. You've got to work harder to get the same amount of stuff done. You've got to make your own bricks. And for some reason, as he's telling me this story, I'm like, that's what your brain is going through. You're no longer providing it with the bricks, with the brain chemicals from the drugs. You've got to make your own bricks. And your body's not really capable of that, and things start shutting down, just like it did with the Israelites in Egypt. They couldn't handle that workload, just like your body can't handle the workload in withdrawal. Mm-hmm. And that just clicked for me in such a wild way. And when I explained it to my client, he's like, yes, that's exactly it. I need bricks. That makes so much sense. So how do I get bricks without drugs? How do I get bricks without meth?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know, but that's the $1 million question. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
What? Go ahead, Flindt.
No. Please go.
I was going to say it reminds me of the parallel. You became aware of this recently. Rat Park, the study. I don't know if you've heard about this. So what they did was initially he was testing on rats in a cage by themselves. Here's water with cocaine. Of course, the one eventually would overdose with the cocaine. It was going back constantly. And they went, this might not be the right structure to do this test concerning drug studies on rats. So they gave them a park with a bunch of other rats. So they had regular water and cocaine water, but they found that the more rats that could interact, have sex with each other, play on wheels, all these things, eventually they stopped, all kinds of food, they stopped going to the cocaine water. They just stopped. It wasn't that they weren't still putting it there, they were, because they had community, they had purpose, they had involvement, and I think that's the bricks. Is these people that you don't know how to build bricks, and I went through it. I still struggle with it at times. Like, where's my sober community? Where's that interaction? Where's my growth? Where's my involvement? And so I think if we can move it away from, like your client, lock them up to, we've got an incentive now for state and local government and law enforcement and everything, get them in a facility and start helping them learn how to build those bricks themselves.
Give them a wheel to run on and a community to interact with.
Exactly.
Maybe let's not introduce sex into the drug rehab facilities. That feels negligent in some way.
No, because you're going to get discharged for that.
Yeah, and as we tell everybody, at least a year. You can keep a house plan alive for a year, then maybe you can start to date.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah. The story is you get a plant when you get out of recovery, and if you can keep the plant alive for a year, you buy a dog. And if you can keep both the dog and the plant alive for another year, then you can start to date.
That feels like a really good rule.
It really is a good rule. But I want to go back to something that you guys were just talking about it. And it's about giving them a community and giving them the right tools in order to make those bricks. Do you know that is the biggest problem that we have, not only in the state of California, but everywhere else? And you know this as well. People don't have the right insurance to get into treatment. If they have Medi-Cal or any type of government-issued insurance or federal government, private treatment centers don't take it because they don't pay us enough to be able to take that client. Our doors will shut if we have to take all of that. So until we fix the insurance companies, until we fix the treatment industry as a whole, this is the rat in the cage on the wheel. We're just going to keep doing this. We're going to keep doing this until hell freezes over. Nothing is going to change until that happens. I promise you. It's sick. I don't understand why people in government don't understand that. Well, one reason is, and I brought this up yesterday, they're not asking the right questions, and they're certainly not asking the right people. They are not asking us, the addict, that has, and I'm not talking about asking some kid, that's got 6 months of sobriety. I'm talking about asking us who have long-term sobriety, that are actually working in this field, what works and what doesn't. I can tell everybody exactly what works and what doesn't in this thing. And right now, almost nothing is working because we can't provide enough time for these people to get the help they need. When you're dealing with addiction and when you're dealing with opioids, when you're dealing with any drug, it wipes out our dopamine receptors. It wipes out our serotonin levels. It cuts our maturity level in half. It literally fucks us to the point where we don't even know how to think. When the human
changes the entire way your body produces and uses bricks.
Absolutely. So when the human brain doesn't even become fully mature till the age of 26, and that's without any drugs and alcohol, how are you getting this across to a 22-year-old that's been using for 5 years? They don't even have the mental capacity to even understand or for us to be able to get anything across to that person in 17 days or 20 days, because that's now what the insurance companies are doing. They're cutting down the length of time.
That's all you get is 17 or 21 days?
They've dropped them from 20, not every insurance policy, but the majority of them now have dropped it down. Their job is to literally get somebody out of detox and residential as quickly as they can. Now, they'll pay for outpatient over and over and over again. But when you go 17 days and into an outpatient program, you're now out in the world again.
You don't have enough bricks.
You don't have enough bricks.
Let alone to uncover
security.
what's maybe preventing you from building some of those tools to build those bricks, aka
Absolutely.
trauma. It's
Right.
a vast majority of what you see. I mean,
It is. And again, that's kind of what I built my law firm based on, is I went through all this traumatic stuff that I was already kind of on the path of wanting to be a lawyer. I'd been doing mock trial since I was 15, but I had, prior to my brother's murder, lived a very cushy life where, there was not really any problems I couldn't face with a sufficient amount of caffeine and maybe an all-nighter to get my homework done. Right. I was a nationally ranked mock trial champion. I was on this really great, easy kind of life path. Although now that I think about it, looking with my more mature brain, having been through what I've been through, I almost certainly would have been overworked, burnt out, and probably ending up in some sort of addiction like they warn us about at these MCLE conferences. But so then my brother was shot and killed, and I took 6 months off of my life to grieve.
Mm-hmm. Rightfully so.
And adjust to my new universe. And then graduated Fresno State, started law school. 2 months later, I get in a car accident, and I had a severe neck injury. Lost the use of my left arm for a while. Had to have 3 rounds of epidural steroid injections, had to have surgery, was in rehab, learning how to use my arm and my muscles and things again for 1.5 years. And then I was finally, good, finally stable, secure, going to law school, doing the things, and then getting another car accident, 2016. A month after that car accident, Jackson dies. Pam's son, my other brother, one of my other brothers, as I called them. Go through all that, have shoulder surgery, more procedures on my neck, all that. Graduate from law school, study for the bar. My dad breaks his neck. My mom breaks her back in 3 places. My dad gets a bone-eating infection in his spine. Going through all these surgeries and procedures with them, taking care of them, and then once everybody's finally kind of stable, I get in a 3rd car accident. If our spine surgeon doesn't have a beach house paid for by Hesketh surgery bills, then that is exhibit A of what's wrong with the insurance industry, because, my God, he's worked miracles for us. Had to have another neck surgery and spend 6 months at a brain injury rehab facility learning how to walk and talk and see again. And again, it kind of goes back to that traumas of I went through all of this. I had to experience all of this so that I could tell their stories. I know what it's like to have neck pain. So when my client tells me that something just feels wrong in their neck, I can tell them, oh, it's almost like it's kind of cross-threaded, like it's not screwed on right. Yes, those are the words. I had to, stay up at 4 o'clock until 4 o'clock in the morning, checking the jail inmate information, trying to find out if my brother was booked so that I could resonate with my clients who were going through the same thing, or my clients' families who were going through the same thing with my clients, so that I could learn how to navigate these systems and connect with these people to be able to give them the help that they need, A, in their life, B, in the legal system. Because the legal system, nobody ever hires a lawyer because they're having a great day, right? It just doesn't happen. Maybe in adoption cases, but even then there's still some sort of trauma that leads to that child being in the adoption system. And so whether this case is the traumatic thing going on in your life or there's some traumatic thing going on in your case, the legal system is going to be traumatic to deal with. Dealing with your lawyer doesn't have to be. I spent the first several years of my career at, typical law firms where, we'd drag our clients down to the office. They'd have to schedule appointments to talk to us, go through this whole loop of receptionists and paralegals just to be able to ask their attorney a question. And we were put on this pedestal as this super important person. And then you'd show up and we'd call you into the office and we'd be wearing a suit, and it was almost like you get dragged into the principal's office at school, right? And for folks dealing with addiction, they might be all too familiar with that setup of getting called into the principal's office and being in trouble and yada, yada, yada. I have zero desire to go through that rigmarole. I have zero desire to put my clients through that bullshit. It shouldn't be that hard to ask a question of your lawyer.
Right.
And so when I was building my firm, I kind of set it up with that in mind of, luckily, when I had my car accidents, my lawyer was one of my best friends. I have her cell phone number. I don't have to go through all that. My clients should be able to text me. They should be able to text me and my law clerk and my legal assistant all at the same time. So we set up a case texting service, and it does just that. You can send us a text message with your question or concern. It also saves a note to your file, and everybody's aware of it, so you don't have to tell us the story 17 times. Reduces the confusion in the system.
Right. I got to say this one story because it has to do with one of my brother-in-laws. And this was years ago, and I'm not going to mention his name. Don't worry, but I just love this guy, and he was in the middle of some lawsuit. This is back in the late '80s, and
his lawyer was probably on a lot of coke.
Probably, and
Everybody was.
And he had to walk into the opposing counsel's office, right? And it was this very prestigious firm. And my brother-in-law is about as quick-witted as they come, and so it was for a deposition. So he walks in, and the lawyers are all sitting on this side of the table, and a couple of his lawyers are here, and he walks in and he goes, and he did this on purpose, and he gets this look on his face, and he goes, it was a typical gorgeous conference room, right? He goes, "Oh my gosh," he says, "look at all these books." He says, I just can't believe it. He goes, "Are they yours?" And one of the attorneys says, yes, they are. And my brother-in-law looks at him and goes, not impressed. and sat down. He had him right there. Okay, he had him. It was just a beautiful story. I really liked it. Yeah.
But I'm glad that you have that approach, because the process can add extra trauma to already traumatic situations.
Very much so. Like, I remember sitting through, after my brother was killed, there was a murder trial. And I remember going to court for each and every single one of these proceedings, from shooting to sentencing. I only missed 2 days because I had mock trial tournaments and Fresno State was flying me somewhere to go argue with somebody. So I had to miss real trial to do fake trials. But so I'm sitting in the courtroom and I'm waiting for my brother's, or the shooter's case to get called. And I'm watching all these other people come up to call their case with their attorneys, and everybody just looks confused as hell. So confused. And they're like asking their attorney a question at the podium while the case is being called. And the attorney's like, "No, just say yes. Just say yes." Well, that doesn't feel right to me. How do you know what you're saying yes to if you don't understand the process, if you don't understand the question, if you don't know what's going on? Right. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to ask the question, trying to get this information so that you can feel more safe and secure in the process, and your concerns are just being written off. Mm-hmm. That's crap. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I don't like it. And so when I started my firm, one of my kind of missions was to break down this stereotype of lawyers where it is a beautiful office with a bookshelf full of books that nobody in that damn office has ever read, but they're there for decoration and whatever. Right. Where you have to fight like hell to go through this whole system, to talk with your lawyer, to ask a couple of questions, and then they just disappear, retreating to their, wood-paneled office with their marble table to go do things that are more important than your life, your questions. That's just crap.
Yeah.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
Well, and I think I have that fear as we learn more about a lot of these different harm reduction modalities that some of these kids, I don't know how much you've looked into harm reduction or where, but that's some of my concerns when they approach. I was doing the research yesterday for us as we want to educate, and it's like, doctors will most likely recommend methadone and Suboxone for a year. And a fucking year?
Right.
So we're transferring you off of one drug, throwing you on one because it's legal and insurance might cover it. That's the pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
And I learned this yesterday too, Flindt. And you might know that. Do you know pharmaceutical companies make far more than energy companies? 10 times more money annually?
I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So you think the oil companies, PG&E, all that, they make far more money.
Oh yeah.
So what does that tell you? What's going on?
Well, again, it's like when I did that, I wrote something, I don't know, this is years ago, on just the number of different pain pills that were out on the market with all these pharmaceutical companies. And I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but you'll get the gist of it. There was something like 42 different brands of Vicodin, of hydrocodone. There was like 24 different brands of morphine. And the list just goes on and on and on, because each one of those pharmaceutical companies have their own brand name. Then they have different dosages. You'll have a 5 milligram hydrocodone, a 7.5, a 10 milligram, a 30,
an extended release, a 12-hour.
Right, all the way up to 80 milligram OxyContin. And if we didn't stop Purdue when we did, they were actually in the midst of developing a 160 milligram OxyContin
Yes,
pill.
that's what the world needs.
Right? Isn't that
That's like an immediate nod out.
It's immediate, you're out.
Yeah.
You're gone. Okay, exactly. And all the while, still old Dr. Sackler from Purdue Pharma was still preaching the fact that this is not addictive. No shit. No shit. So yeah. But I also want to get back to one, we were talking earlier just about the addict in general. And, and I've got something I've got a picture of a young man on my phone who, this family has already lost one child. I'm not going to get too informative here. Already lost one child to an overdose. This family is in the legal profession. And now they have a second child who has been photographed and not quite caught yet, but breaking into every car he can find.
I'm telling you, it's the 10851s.
Every home he can find north of Herndon. I'm not going to say anything elsewhere, but this isn't. But this, I don't know if this is a situation where this person is breaking in just so he can score to get his drug. I think this is literally a real criminal act here, because it's being repeated almost nightly, And again, those are. Does this person deserve jail time? Yeah, he does. In my opinion, yeah, he does, because this person is not out there asking for help. This is more than one time or two times or three, whatever it is, and it's blatant. It's literally blatant. So I also believe that there is that line. Again, I don't want to decriminalize the addict here, but there does come a point where, yes, the addict, including myself, we have to be responsible for the actions that we committed, the
Right.
crimes that we. I'm sorry. It's part of the recovery process. There are consequences to our
Accountability
actions.
is a step for a reason.
You bet. And I'll tell you what, there have been more times than not where jail has actually helped somebody and saved that person's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As rough as it is and as shitty as it is, jail has actually helped some people in this. But again, I do believe that there comes a point when we have to be responsible for what we do.
I tell you, though, if he were to get caught and he were to get arrested for breaking into these cars, again, it's the vehicle code 10851 that I was talking about, where the only time I've ever seen them committed is by people suffering with addiction. What's he going to get? Probation?
Right.
Yeah.
Our probation officers, they do their best, but they don't have the resources to devote to these people.
Right.
They can force them to undergo drug and alcohol assessments. They can put them into a...
Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about these drug and alcohol assessments. Without me mentioning any names, because there are some names that right now, they are literally on my tongue, okay, that want to just spew it out there.
No, Flindt.
God, okay? There are people doing these assessments that they need to be looked at.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, looked at hard. I can't tell you, and I'm thinking of you know who out there. It's the same assessment for every single person. Nothing changes. The verbiage doesn't change. It could be a female, a male, 40 years old, 20 years old, 60 years old, 18 years old, and that assessment has the same verbiage time after time after time. And this person has been doing it forever. And it's bullshit. I'm just going to call it like I see it. It's bullshit. You know, so the people that are doing the assessments aren't even helping people in the right way here.
We might be talking about the same person, might be talking about a different person. I don't know who you're referring to, but you said you know who, but I don't know who.
me either.
But there's here in Fresno, we've got different diversion programs and things like that. And so you can get assessments done on your clients and to try and get them into some sort of diversion program. And there are some people that do a really great job. Yep. There are some people that do a really great job. And there are some people where every time I get a report back, it's the exact same.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They just changed the name and the case number.
That's
but
it.
It's the exact same report being given for every single defendant with the exact same treatment recommendations.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but that doesn't make a lick of sense to me.
It doesn't. And the referral is always to an outpatient program.
Always.
Always. Always. And that person's still getting their paycheck.
I know. I'm having to write it from my client's trust account.
You bet your ass.
Yeah.
You bet your ass. Yeah.
Well, and it sucks that is always approach. I mean, what?
See,
it's the disheartening part of people that there's nothing wrong with being in a business of servitude. Doesn't mean you have to live in destitute, but do your fucking job.
right.
Like, do the service. Be a service. Help people.
And do it with honor and do it with dignity and do it with everything that you needed when you were in that spot.
You bet.
Even if you're doing these assessments and treatment for people with alcohol and drug addiction and you've never been through it. I've never been through addiction recovery personally. By the grace of God, I got through all my injuries without getting hooked on those pain meds. By the grace of God, my brother and I grew up in the same home and he ended up with some sort of addiction and I did not. I don't know how it worked. I don't know why, but I'm grateful for it. I never had to deal with that. I did have to recover from other things, and it's a very individualized process. It drives me nuts. It kind of reminds me of, I've had 2 spine surgeries. My dad's had 3 neck surgeries. My mom's had 3 back surgeries. Our spines, I don't know, they're fragile in the Hesketh family. But there are certain doctors where they will recommend the exact same surgery for everybody, because that's the only surgery they know how to do. Well, that's shit. If you don't know how to treat this problem and treat it well, send them somewhere else.
Right.
Get them the help that they actually need instead of the only help that you're equipped to offer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do that with my clients all the time. There are certain cases where I'm certain that I'm not the best lawyer for them. I have no qualms about saying it. Hey, I'm not the best person for this. You should go see this person or that person or the other because they're going to take care of you better than I can. And instead of me trying to do my best over here, which I know is not what you deserve, I'd rather devote that time and attention to people that I know I am the best person to take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I don't refer everybody to our treatment center because it may not be a good fit.
Right.
I'm not going to put a 60-year-old guy in with a bunch of 22-year-olds. It's not a good fit.
Right.
Then again, maybe there's a time where a 60-year-old would fit with all the 22. I don't know. So again, it's a case-by-case basis. But when you talk about the person that I just wrote on here that both you and I know that has been doing this same bullshit, okay, for the last, 20 years, and we wonder why we're in the mess that we're in. Hell, we can't even fix something as small as that. I mean, doesn't anybody in that courthouse look at this shit and go, wait a minute, I think I've seen this before?
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah, the answer is no.
They don't ever do that.
They don't, because they don't give a shit, or they're so inundated with so much other work and bullshit there that they don't have the time for it. I don't know.
Well, they don't have the time or the technology. So, and this kind of goes into a different setup. But so a similar thing has been going on with police reports, where I have noticed that every single police report for every single law enforcement contact of a certain type is written and worded the exact same way, copy and pasted, with a couple of things like the name and the gender changed. That makes me doubt the credibility of what you're saying happened. If you're saying that the exact same thing happened to person A, and then the exact same thing happened to person B on a different street in a different area 6 months later, I'm starting to doubt what you have to say, officer. And so when I set up my law firm, I kind of took a hint from the insurance companies, because they keep so much data on so many people and they have it all indexed so they can easily search it. Same with law enforcement. They keep so much data on so many people and it's all indexed so they can search it and find what they needed at a moment's notice. So when I set my firm up, I wanted it all indexed and searchable so that I could find everything easy as pie. And that's how I started noticing that these reports from this assessment person are all exactly the same, because, hey, I can pull up every case that I've had him or her involved in, and look at all the documents submitted by this person. I can look at all the documents submitted or tied to this police officer at a moment's notice, compare, and hey, it's all the same thing, just being copied and pasted. Whether it's a police report about a DUI interaction or a drug and alcohol assessment. Right. Everybody's just copying and pasting. And I really feel like our community, our clients, are the fellow human beings in the world around us, whether they're at Clovis High School or under a bridge. I feel like they deserve better than a copy and paste job.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, going back to this assessment thing, how in the world does anybody doing an assessment think that treatment for alcohol is the same as the treatment for opioid?
It's totally different bricks involved, totally different chemicals, totally different bodily processes.
Again, meth, opioids, alcohol, meth, cocaine, whatever it is.
The only common thread is that desire not to get sick.
That's it. But again, that assessor. When you've got somebody, look, it's one thing if somebody were using opioids for, let's say, 6 months, okay? Or you've got a long-term opioid user like myself that used for 23 years.
The addictive process between the two is going to be completely different.
Completely different. And so you think that 23-year addict is just going to just march his or her happy ass into an outpatient program and everything's going to be fine? No.
You gotta drag him in, kicking and screaming.
And I wonder where that person is going, because I know exactly where they're going. You know it, I know it.
And no one's saying it.
And no one is saying it. That's a conflict of interest right there. For a person to be working for the county, to own a facility, I'll say it, to own a facility and taking those county people and shipping them right over to their program. That's bullshit. And again, it amazes me that this has been going on for this many years. It's a disservice to the community. It's a disservice to the client. It's a disservice all the way around.
But that is how the county and the court system looks at everything, right. Whether it's addiction treatment or whether it's domestic violence offenders, they all have to take the same batterers intervention program. If it's people charged with theft crimes, they might end up in the same theft diversion program, but everybody's treated the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. Everybody.
I think that's a mess. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love our mental health diversion program that has come out in the last couple of years, where it's a very individualized process. You can still get those BS reports from a doctor that'll copy and paste the same thing for everybody. But when I've had clients that I'm looking at mental health diversion for, I'm actually getting them in touch with trained psychiatrists or psychologists that are reviewing them and doing individualized reports, meeting with them for an hour and a half to talk about everything, summarizing it in the report, and getting to know that person, their mental health issues, their adverse childhood experiences, all of the trials, tribulations, and traumas that are landing them in the legal system, and making individualized recommendations about what this person needs for these particular issues. And I wish that our drug diversion, deferred entry of judgment, PC 1000, whatever program it is, whatever you're wanting to call it, I wish that there was a more individualized aspect of it, like there is for the mental health diversion programs.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we look at each of these mental health issues and illnesses in their individual capacity, because the treatment for a schizophrenic is going to be different than the treatment for a bipolar person. It's the same thing with addiction.
Yeah.
The treatment for an alcoholic is going to be very different than the treatment for a 23-year opioid abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Or you would think.
So when you're talking about mental health, are you able to refer your clients, or those people that need that, are they able to see private psychiatrists?
Yep.
Or is it, oh really?
Yep.
So just not county psychiatrists?
They can see county ones.
They can, but what I'm saying is they can see both. They can see...
They can see whoever I send them to.
Okay, that I like very much.
I have so much control in the mental health diversion process about what level of care I want my client to get. I could send them to the diversion mill people to get a standard report that's going to say the same thing for every single person.
Right.
I could send them there if I wanted to do that. I think that's a disservice to my client, and my clients deserve better than copy and paste jobs.
Right.
I'm going to send them to something that I think will work for them. Whether it's a psychiatrist because I think their meds maybe need to be adjusted and aren't sufficient for their current stress load of life, haven't been adjusted in 15 years, and maybe that's why they had this episode. Or I could send them to a psychologist to help deal with, whatever, and get these reports done with individualized recommendations.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I could send them to Turning Point or those sort of county places also, if the client only has Medi-Cal or some other sort of government-sponsored insurance.
Right.
I could do that as well.
Right.
But I get to look at my client, their individualized needs, individualized resources, and work with them to figure out what the best choice is.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know? Wow. I could break this entire system wide open. Okay, just wide open. But let's save that for another time.
Save that for another time. I think, as we've talked more about harm reduction, decriminalization as they tie in, my gripe is, okay, you're all about decriminalization, so if we're doing that, then we better damn well across the board start to look at addiction as a mental health issue.
Yeah.
That's giving you an attorney that cares the power to do your job to get the best for that individual.
Yeah.
Right.
And at the end of the day, keep your lights on, thrive as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it because you're doing it with integrity. And I think that's the thing that we're missing. It's just the way you're sharing here is just like, it was like, oh my God, the lack of integrity.
It's out the window.
Yeah.
But this is this is no surprise. It's been out the window for a long time.
Yeah.
Since the 70s, when the lawyers who were doing coke designed the systems.
You bet. Yeah. Again, and I keep referring to this in most of our podcasts, it's going to be you guys that are going to have to make the change. So I will never see this change in my lifetime. I just won't do it. Even if I have another 20 years, all right, I'm not going to see it. It's not going to happen unless some blankets are really pulled off some people here, and I mean exposed all the way down the line. And look, I still got a big set. I'll still do it, right? But it's going to depend on your generation and everybody else that's your age that's going to be able to do this thing. And if you don't, man, you guys are totally fucked.
Well, I
mean, I'm not kidding.
The damn shame of it is it's not just that addict, it's their family, and it's the whole society. It's the whole county, the city, the town, the block, everything that it's going to affect in that way.
And by the way, it's just not here in Fresno. I want to make that perfectly clear. This is in every county courthouse across the United States.
I couldn't imagine what San Francisco and Los Angeles are like. Fuck that.
And just imagine, you're doing an assessment on somebody, and I don't even know what that costs the county, right? But let's say it's, I don't know, maybe it's $100 an assessment, whatever it is, and you're doing 40 a day.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I'm sorry, you can't do good work for $100. You could do copy and paste jobs. That's it.
Exactly. So again, you have to pay people.
As a taxpayer, I would way rather pay more
Yes.
for these treatments and assessments and educating folks on their disease process, whether that's mental health or addiction or, like in my case, a brain injury, getting information and starting to understand what was going on with my brain injury and what bricks my brain was lacking and how I needed to support myself and what sort of self-care rituals needed to be implemented. The more education I got about what was going on, the more I was able to work with myself and my limitations. And I would way rather pay more in taxes for that than to keep paying for these copy-paste jobs.
And I think at the end of the day, we'd end up saving more money.
Of course we would.
Because we probably have more people that are actually starting to prosper, thus going out, being a functioning part of society,
paying
working,
taxes.
Paying taxes back in instead of being an expense on the taxes. It's just how, at the end of the day, we got to shift the
stealing
incentives.
cars.
Yeah,
right.
We got to shift these incentives.
Yeah, exactly.
But as long as it's funneling one way, I don't know. Frightening stuff.
Yep.
Frightening stuff, Mr. Andersen.
Yes,
do we want to discuss any harm reduction? How much knowledge do you have on harm reduction?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I see a lot of news articles about things going on in San Francisco with safe use centers and things like that. And I don't practice there. I don't really know what's going on here in Fresno, but none of it seems very hopeful.
Right. Well, why don't we do this? Do a little research on it, and then I'd love to get your opinion as a lawyer. As a lawyer, I'd love to have that opinion.
For sure.
On it because this is an issue. This at least in our opinion, this is an issue. This can be extremely, or it's going to be extremely detrimental, I think, to our society, to the individual. But again, like we both say, we both believe in short-term harm reduction. We don't believe in long-term harm reduction, and that's where it's going to I think it's going to massacre our system. I really do.
I think it's one of the situations I'm fearful where it's like people, well, the government's saying, and I'm like, oh yeah, because they would never steer us wrong in any situation.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe
I trust them fully.
Yeah,
Right.
the past couple of years ago, they absolutely delivered the most accurate information on everything.
All of it.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of the fear, and where I sit is, okay, who's the ones that are driving some of this? Is it Big Pharma? Because, hey, you don't think they're smart enough to market this direction? And go, well, we're moving them off of these street things that could kill them, and they don't know what the supply they're getting is, and so here it is. We're giving them this safe supply, which I get. But again, to go forever?
Right.
To live that way? I don't know. That sounds fucking miserable.
I had a client once he was a homeless person that was injured he was a pedestrian that was hit by a car. And he was very difficult to get a hold of because he was a homeless person who didn't always have a working cell phone number. We didn't always know where he was. He didn't have an address, anything like that. And we were talking to him about how, hey, we're helping you with this case. We need to be able to get a hold of you. Sometimes there's really important timelines, things like that. And he's like, oh, you can always find me at the methadone clinic at 7:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
I've been there every morning for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
That is the one constant in your life.
Mm-hmm.
A working cell phone number is not a constant. A place to live is not a constant. A bed to sleep on is not a constant. Food to eat is not a constant. Safety, security, community, any of that is not a constant. But every freaking morning, our government is willing to give you methadone at 7:45.
Yes.
For 20 years. And
how long ago was that, by the way?
2016-ish.
Okay, so he's still at it.
most likely.
Guarantee, unless he's dead.
Yeah.
I haven't kept up with him.
Right, but I guarantee.
Well, no,
you,
understandable.
He's still,
Yeah.
right. But I guarantee if he's still alive, he's still there every
Right.
morning at 7:45.
Because it makes me think, okay, with the situation, you do your job effectively. Let's say you got some sort of settlement, and I don't know about you. As primarily an alcoholic, I'm switching from the natty ice to going to buy the really expensive bottle of rum that I enjoy every night.
You bet.
So it's this guy probably the same thing. Why do I want method? I can go back and get heroin. Well,
Right.
and now what heroin? You ain't getting it without fentanyl in it. And,
Right.
So it's that kind of thing. Like, wow, 20 years. Like nobody's going, hey, George has been coming here for 20 fucking years.
They'll never say anything.
We should maybe look at some underlying causes. Like what is it that is leading him to have this craving for drugs? What is he replacing in his life with
No,
drugs?
you don't understand. It's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late.
I have a hard time believing it's
And I-
ever too late
and-
for
and I-
somebody, and
and-
it might be just because I'm willing to fight lost causes.
And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to tell you why. How old was he 20 years ago?
60s.
Okay.
So the 2016, he was in his 60s.
Yeah.
2016, he was in his 60s. The chances, I will never say never, but the chances of him coming off of methadone at his age now, so he would be my age, 67, 68, somewhere along there, chances of him ever coming off of it are slim and none. Because, first of all, it is the most difficult drug to ever come off of, ever.
I watched a client and a friend detox from Suboxone, and that was the most terrifying shit I've ever witnessed in my life.
Times it by 100 with methadone. Times it by 100. I've been on it, so I know. I'm here to tell you. There's nothing out there I haven't tried. Okay, so
Even the safe shit.
Right. It took me 2 years to come off methadone, and I did it by myself with no help from that clinic because they want to keep you there. They're a for-profit business. Again, I have no problem with for-profit businesses, but that don't call it a treatment center. You're not a treatment center. You are a maintenance center. 2 years. And by the way, you are supposed to test clean for everything else in your system before they can give you your methadone. And right now, that's not happening. They're still giving it to you anyway. You can go outside of Medmark. You can go outside of Aegis. You can go outside of BART. All right, all here in Fresno at 5 a.m. in the morning because that's when they open their doors. And you're going to see people lined up out there, and you're still going to see people in the back parking lots that are selling them the rest of the shit that's out there. Look, there's nothing about this topic I don't know and I don't understand 100%. That poor man, what we call the 2-block area, he will never get out of his 2-block radius. Ever. Okay? Ever. And that is a
because
crime.
he has to stay close to his supply.
Because
coincidentally, that's where he got hit by a car.
He cannot.
Right?
Right? He
Now that I'm thinking about it.
He cannot go to Santa Cruz. He cannot go to Hawaii. He cannot go to Europe. He can't go to Selma without his methadone. And you can't walk into any other city, if you forgot it, and say, I need my dose for the day. You can't do it.
It's not a life to live.
It's not, yeah. It's just existing.
Whether you're constantly looking for a fix of dope or constantly looking for a fix of methadone, showing up 7:45 every single day.
Now somebody will say, well, they'll give you take-homes, and they will. Okay, take-homes, or you get maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, depending how long you've been in the program. You may even get them 6 days a week, but you always got to go in 1 day a week. At least, and that's after a long time of being in the program. They give you the little bottles with your dose in it. You have to put it in a locked box, right? And the box has to be locked when you walk in, has to be locked when you walk out, and that's it. You know, I mean, I used to walk. Oh, by the way, you also have to see your counselor twice a month. Okay?
What do they cancel you on?
Well, let me tell you what they cancel you on.
You asked the right question. You are a good lawyer. You knew exactly what that.
Yeah, absolutely, dick. Okay, is what they counseled us on. Nothing. I would walk in there because you have to see them in order to continue to get your methadone. So I would walk in there with my phone. I don't remember the lady's name. I could give a shit less. I'd walk in there. I would set the time for 50 minutes. I'd hit it. I'd reach over on her desk. I'd grab a magazine. I'd put my feet up on her desk. She would start by asking me a series about 3, 4, 5 questions. I never even responded. I wanted to see what was going to happen. I swear to God, again, this is a true story. I never responded. Try sitting there for 50 minutes when somebody's asking you a question and not responding. I didn't do it. Did it matter? Not one bit. Alarm went off. I said, see you in 2 weeks. Walked out. See you in 2 weeks.
That makes me think of the LAP program. I have a friend who's a lawyer who is dealing with some addiction issues, as a lot of lawyers do. And he is in the lawyer's assistance program that's put on by the state bar.
Another joke.
And so he has to get tested, every so often, random tests. He has to get these assessments done. He has to see a counselor every week. And he's like, man, I'm so glad I'm in my own therapy because that was fucking pointless.
It is. By the way, do they watch them when they pee in the cup?
I have no idea.
Probably not. Probably not. So again, another waste of time, another waste of money, of resources, because we all know how to fool a drug test. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. If you're not, and again, that's a fine line legal issue, okay? But if we're really serious about this, I'm sorry, everybody has seen one. Or everybody, right? Pull it out, pee in the cup, then you know for sure. Mm-hmm. Then you know for sure. We're too afraid to get the for sure answers here. Anyway, just food for thought.
Well, and it makes me think of how this particular friend is really utilizing all of his resources to get healthy.
Good for him.
Some people really want it.
Yes.
3 or 4 A meetings a day sometimes.
Good for him.
But at least 1 AA meeting every single day, even when he's on vacation, things like that. Really working his ass off to get healthy, get sober, and stay that way.
That's wonderful.
And then we look at these systems that are designed to help with that the systems that are designed for that harm reduction. You don't want to lose your career. We're going to put you in this lawyer's assistance program, give you assistance to stay clean, stay competent, take care of yourself and your clients. We're going to put these systems in place, and the systems do jack shit. The only things that are working is the things that he arranged on his own, finding his own therapist, finding his own rat park community in AA meetings and things like that, and really confronting his own personal bullshit, because none of those systems are stepping in to do it for him.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
None of those systems are inviting him to do it for himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we got to have a shift from a let me hold your hand to, hey, I'll get down there on the ground with you and talk you your way up, but you're going to have to do this yourself. And just be fucking honest about it. Just be honest. That's the way it's going to work. No matter what. No matter what system, you're going to have to do the work. No one's going to do it for you. You didn't get where you're at in life. You certainly didn't get through the bar exam by just going, hey, somebody give me the Cliff Notes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
I got through law school that way, but not the bar exam.
Well, just talking with you this first time, I can already tell how well you absorb information as is. So, Shanna, thank you. This has been a pleasure. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's fun in here. We can light it up from time to time, and we normally do. But thanks for coming in, really.
For sure.
And I'd like you to do a little more homework on harm reduction. Let's bring her back in, and
That
we'll hit
sounds
it hard.
lovely.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Maybe
Thanks.
even tackling some of the war on drugs stuff, too, being that you do
I
recognize
expect a reading list.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I've got your contact. I'll send it to you. If people want to find out more about you, get a hold of you, maybe inquire about the services you are doing here in Fresno County.
Yeah, so our phone number at the office is 559-490-1226. Nobody has time to sit on the phone and talk to humans anymore, so that's a textable number. You could also find us on Instagram at Trauma Law CA. We do a lot of educational, informative content about like what the system, what the process of criminal cases and personal injury cases actually consists of, kind of answering those questions that I've heard around the courthouse for years on end, and also some kind of funny stuff too every once in a while just to keep things entertaining. And then our website is traumalawca.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page.